Hi there, this is Dr. Anna Lowe from the Happy Health Institute. I have found that detoxification, the liver health, has become one of my top topics that I talk to my patients and my audience. And inevitably, infrared sauna comes up because it's just such an efficient tool that really gives the effect of detoxification and also for healing and putting you into a relaxation state, which is all super important for the modern day life. And so I want you to be able to have great tools and guide in understanding how to buy, how to pick, and how to choose um, the best infrared sauna so that you are not making the mistake of actually using something that ends up hurting you more or causing more issues for you. So, who I brought on is Miss Bonnie Casazza and also Rodney Vestal, and they're from the company Whole Body Wellness Concept. I met Bonnie in a trade show while I was in a conference in Phoenix, and she did a demo on her product. However, because of her expertise, she's gone around the world and really looked for the specific sauna that really serves her consumers. I thought that her opinions are super valuable, and she has a great way of conveying the importance of these little tidbits. So, hope you enjoy it. My big topic today is really helping my patients and my audience find how to really understand saunas, infrared saunas, the benefits on saunas. You know, when they start picking, there's so many choices, so many companies, so many different materials, and there's concerns about EMF. So I'd love for today that we can actually help answer some of these questions.
For me, an infrared sauna had to have a number of qualifications. The wood had to be good wood that was treated correctly. The EMFs had to be very, very low. Those were two of the biggest things. And the unit that we picked is from a company that uses red Canadian cedar. They use their own forest, so we know that there's not a lot of bad stuff in it even when it's grown. And then it's dried immediately in Canada with heat. Now, 90% of all wood is treated with formaldehyde. So we made sure that this is only treated with heat. That's very, very important because then you don't have the off gas. And then the EMFs, so important. Safe EMFs is between 3 and 7. We had some saunas that we tested that were over 300 EMFs, just off the charts, really, really bad. And that is not where we wanted to be. So we looked and found the company that we are now with, and their units are very low. And let me explain a little bit about that. What we found is on the carbon fiber far infrared, you can have a 2-layer and you can have a 9-layer, and the heat is going to be the same. So the cheaper models, they're going to use the 2-layer because they can get by with it and save money. But the EMFs are based on the number of layers. So what this company did is went into the lab. They kept layering until they got to 0 EMFs. We actually, on 4 of our heaters, have 0 EMFs. We have one that is a near infrared, and that is also 0 near infrared bulb, and that's for your gut level. And then we have one that used to be ceramic, but ceramic has 2 problems. The EMFs are too high and it cracks over time. So we've gone to titanium, which has been just spectacular. EMFs are next to 0 and it will never crack. Titanium will last forever. Now, if you held a milligauss reader inside our sauna and went right up against that front heater, that one heater that is the titanium, you were smack up against it, it would register 0.7. And remember, safe is 3 to 7. So this one would register 0.7 right up against it. If you pulled away 6 inches, it would register 0, which is where most people's legs and knees are. We have it near the knees. So ours is pretty much 0. And that was so important to us Because if you have all these great ideas of infrared, and infrared is fantastic, but if you've got toxins because you have off gassing, if you have heaters that are too high EMFs, it negates it. So the other factor that we looked at was the glue. Did they use glue? Most inexpensive saunas will take the carbon fiber heater, slather the back of it with glue, which is toxic, and stick it to the wood. So every time you turn that heater on, you have off gassing from that glue. And we went, oh, no, no way, we're not going to do that. And so this company, we found, takes their carbon fiber, bolts it to a frame, and slides it into a sleeve. Those are all huge factors for us, and they had to be taken care of before we went and purchased these and recommended them to our people in our wellness center.
And there's a reason we picked cedar. Cedar is antibacterial, antimicrobial. So especially in places where mold is an issue or a potential issue, cedar won't grow mold. And so even if people sweat in it, or even it won't absorb their toxicity. There might be sweat stains on the seat, but they won't absorb their toxicity, and it will not grow bacteria in the sauna itself, and that's extremely important. The next thing that's important to talk about is material that is not cedar, and there's a number of products out there. And the most important thing to remember is that if it is a man-made product, and we've all seen the tent saunas that zip up to your neck, those are made of some kind of material that is either plastic or it is anyway. Generally, those are made from petroleum, and the petroleum is going to use several different chemicals. So what we've found in most of those tent saunas, in the reviews that we found of those online, that they are literally off-gassing 7 different poisonous chemicals. And the other thing that's important in choosing a sauna, besides the wood and the EMFs, which are the very first 2 that you have to check. The next one is what's the material made of. If it's a natural material like cedar, hemlock, they make a lot from hemlock and a lot from other woods that don't have the same qualities as cedar. So by far, cedar is the highest quality wood for a sauna. And there are times when, price might preclude you from getting cedar. So once you know that, but I will say this, generally, if they're going to use something other than cedar, they're also going to use inferior heaters that are probably going to have high EMFs, and they're probably going to use glue in their product. So when it's not cedar, that's your first clue to check all the other stuff.
Well, one of the reasons why I think we're talking so much about the quality and the off-gassing and the materials, it's because our skin is actually the biggest organ, and when it's heated, when it's heated, there's just more absorption ability, and that's when we're the most vulnerable in actually reabsorbing any toxins that we're surrounded by. That's why I always laugh and talk to my patients about, after you have a nice sauna, the last thing you want is just jump into a shower and then just pour these chemical soap on yourself, and just then you just basically reabsorb everything back. And this is the same concept. It's when you're actually immersed, or a hot tub. When you go in a hot tub and you have chlorine and all these treatment, you're expanding all your follicles, but then you're actually allowing for better absorption of these things that you actually don't want in your system. So it's environmental health is actually a really big part of our general health now. Those great. So I'm hearing wood, I'm hearing EMF, I'm hearing glue. And then material like titanium for actually longevity versus ceramic. So what about the different kind of infrared, having near, far, or all spectrum? What does that mean when there are these choices being offered?
A lot of the all spectrum stuff, and we do in our sauna, we have all spectrums, but it's for a very specific reason. We have a near infrared lamp in the seat. We have that for a very specific reason. We have that for colorectal health, for uterine health, for prostate health, for general gut level health, because near infrared penetrates much deeper. But here's the problem with near infrared, and that is it also can blister the skin. It's so hot that far infrared will never burn the skin or never blister it unless it gets over 220 degrees. And no one ever would be silly enough to go in a sauna that's over 220 degrees, even if it was far infrared. So because far infrared penetrates, but it doesn't heat the skin and it doesn't heat any clothing that you may have on. Whereas near infrared could actually get hot enough to start your clothes on fire. It gets that hot. And when you're dealing with near infrared, they do have near infrared saunas where you go in, there's a bank of near infrared lights, but they require you to sit on a chair or stand and spin in a circle. We call it the rotisserie chicken effect, right? Because if you stand in one place for too long, it will burn you. And at the very least, if you're far enough away, it will cause inflammation. And one of the things we're trying to avoid is inflammation. So whereas there is a lot of hype around the depth of penetration of near infrared, there's really no reason for that depth of penetration. We're 1.5 to 2 inches with far infrared. We're really attacking the subcutaneous layer of fat. That's where the toxins are stored. And then then 2 inches anywhere into the body is more than enough to treat the entire body. So the near infrared is technology that is new and different, and so it gets hyped, but not a fan. As a matter of fact, we also have an on-off switch for our near infrared in case it becomes too warm. And people, you can feel it when it gets too warm. You go, oh, okay. You sit up in your seat and you turn it off. And so that's in full spectrum. Full spectrum just means it's got near infrared, mid infrared, and far infrared. I've not seen any studies that indicate that full spectrum is any better than just having the far infrared. For 60 years, we have experimented. All the information you hear about infrared and infrared technology is about far infrared. It was the first discovery of the far infrared spectrum for use in this type of process was a scientist in Japan that first discovered the spectrum and that how it benefited the body. And after about 10 years of holding it back, he said, this is too important for the world, and he released the technology.
While you were actually on this topic of infrared and the discovery of it and being used in sauna, can you actually talk about what's the main difference of just regular sauna, the ones that you see in a gym, and then it's actually have a heater, people used to just pour water on them, and then the progression to using infrared, and actually what is the action that underlying infrared that makes it that much more effective, and as a result being used now so much for health benefits?
The main difference that you're going to see, and it's a huge difference. So a jacuzzi, a hot bath, a heating pad, a steam sauna, the ones you pour the rocks on, all of those very simply go to the outside muscular layer. They do not go to the cellular. So they go outside muscular. They will cause inflammation because it's a regular heat. So they will cause inflammation. That's why it used to be, if you had heat, then you had to have the cold, because you had to take down the inflammation. You cause the inflammation with the heat, you take it down with the cold. So all of those are in that category. Whereas infrared is in a totally separate category, because infrared skips over all that and goes right into the cellular layer. And that's where all the great healing is. And because it goes into the cellular layer and doesn't affect the muscle in a negative way, then we don't have the inflammation caused in the muscle. And so we can do long periods of time where it takes down inflammation.
What infrared does is it literally interacts with the chemical interaction with the cells of the body. And first and foremost, it creates nitric oxide. That's why the circulation boost, right? Because we're creating more nitric oxide naturally in the system. We're dilating all the veins, vessels, arteries, capillaries, all the way down to the capillaries. And then we are boosting blood circulation. A paper written by a doctor named Gerald Pollack. I don't know if you're familiar with that name, but he wrote a paper, and I invite you to read this paper, called The Fourth Phase of Water. And he tested how infrared affects water. And what he found is that infrared actually supercharges water. He calls it easy water. It changes the molecular structure of water from H2O to H3O2. It makes the water thinner, literally. And if you were to take a bucket of easy water and put a tube in there, water would actually flow on its own through that tube. And so how that translates to how infrared affects the 80% of the blood that is water, it thins the blood. It makes the blood less coagulant. It actually alkalines the systems of the body. And in capillaries, in many capillaries, and in cartilage, the veins, the veins are smaller than the red blood cells that's trying to feed it. And with the dilation, and then with the flow of the now the thinner and more active flowing blood, now even cartilage in the discs in the spine can begin to heal. We've seen regrowth of cartilage in knees, for example.
Great. I think there are a few interesting features from the personal infrared sauna that you have. One of it being that it's small and you don't have to actually take off your clothes, and you can actually sit in it. And it actually really helps for people who you worry about overheating. So I'd love for the remaining few minutes for you to kind of specifically talk about, why the personal infrared sauna was your choice when you finally came down to picking a sauna that really you find helping people.
It really is. I believe so much in it. I have had a lot of results, and I was surprised at that. We mentioned that I had a wellness center, and in my wellness center, we had the big walk-in sauna. But when I went and interviewed with a new company, I saw in their, oh, there it is. I saw in their warehouse this unit, and I said, what the heck is that? Because it looks so different. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? And they said it was created for the Korean market. And I just went, oh, why? And they said, because they will not put their heart or their head in heat, and your heart and your head are out, so you don't overheat. And that's one of the keys. We don't want you to overheat. So why don't we want you to overheat? Because your body has two modes to it. It has the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And you know them, you just don't know them by those terms. So the sympathetic is your fight or flight. And then the opposite of that is the parasympathetic, which is rest, relaxation, healing, and digestion. And all those things encompass that. And you can be in one or the other. You can never be a little in each. It's literally a switch, one or the other. So as you step into this personal infrared sauna, you are put into the parasympathetic. And all of a sudden you just go, ah, and that's where you heal. We want the healing and the digestion and all those things to happen. And that's where you heal. Now, the reason that Rodney showed you that is because this is what he uses for a desk. That's what I use for a desk too. Many, many people use these for desks. You can stay in them as long as you want because the heart and head are out and you're not overheating. So literally there's no time limit. We suggest a minimum 15 minutes every day with no maximum. And we don't want you to sweat, because when you sweat, you immediately go back into the fight or flight. Sweating is a stress mode. Go on.
I was going to say, so we've always told people we don't want you to sweat. And they said, but you have to sweat to detox, but you have to sweat to detox, but you have to sweat to detox. And we've said, God, our results are so good that can't possibly be true, right? It's just been so, last year, two things happened for us. One, a doctor called us and said, hey, I have two patients that just came in. They have deadly levels of uranium. And can we help them? Can your saunas help them? And we said, there's only one way to find out. And that's to use the sauna. And he said, well, what protocol do I use? I don't know. Try 4 days a week for an hour at a time and have them drink twice as much water as they normally drink. He did that, and after 4 months, 3 months or 4 months, I don't remember the exact number. It was 3 or 4 months. The uranium was still measurable, but barely. And that's uranium. That's not that, which is tougher than lead, which is tougher than mercury, which is tougher than all of them. And he left them in our sauna at 120 degrees. So they didn't drop a single drop of sweat. So we know that none of the toxins came out of that sweat, right? And then there was a doctor in a group of doctors in Canada, at the University of Quebec, I think. Anyway, they did a 10,000 person test, and they tested their sweat and the levels of toxicity in their sweat. And what they found was that if they were able to extrapolate the amount of sweat that they could push out in a day to 2 liters, there would be less than 1% of their body's daily intake of toxins in 2 liters of sweat. It wasn't in the sweat that the toxins were going. The infrared raises the body temperature. The water molecules that are surrounding the toxins in the subcutaneous layer get excited. They release the toxins. The toxins now are free to run in the bloodstream, which on some level is dangerous, right? But if we're using infrared, we're going to detox those. They're going to run through the lymphatics, the liver, the kidney, and we're going to get rid of it through our body's natural waste disposal system, and not try to use the skin as a waste disposal system. That's not what it's for. And so what they found is we save your sweat, your minerals, your electrolytes for vigorous exercise. For a hot day when your body sweats, the wind blows against it, evaporates, it cools you, but not to use it to try to detox. So if I just do this big giant workout at the gym and I've sweated, and I go into the sauna and get rid of even more fluids along with more electrolytes and more minerals, and then I drink water when I get out, I'm not replacing any of those things. And it becomes, anyway, that's.
Yeah. Well, so, in summarizing it, what I'm hearing is that, truly, we have a very sophisticated detox system, and it's really just not as simple as that simple sweat and, hot and cold. We call it the 3 hot cold in Japanese and Chinese culture. And it's not as simple as that. It really, nowadays in accessing this technology, it's not just getting into any sauna. It's not just, replacing it with water. It really is a very sophisticated practice where you have to think about where you're getting it from. It's like when you drink a cup of coffee that you bought from Starbucks, you want to make sure you don't have that cover that has BPA in it. So you're really thinking about, when you're doing something for your system, how you're actually not actually loading the system based on the product you're getting, but also the actual technology itself is way more sophisticated than just the sweating process. There's actually a lot more going on in the cellular level. There's a lot more going on in the glutathione, liver, phase 1 and phase 2 detox level. And all of these are just tools that actually help with optimizing, and it became sophisticated, I think, in part because our life became sophisticated. What we're exposed to every day became sophisticated. What we eat became sophisticated. And so I'm super grateful that the two of you have spent this time and explaining this. And and really just from a consumer perspective, you deal with this, you answer all the questions. So I think you just very expertly explained to me and my patients and my audience these really important questions they think about when they just do this simple act, this act of getting in a sauna. So thank you so much. And really appreciate your time and your expertise in this.
Thank you.